Hey guys, welcome back. JT here for DelicateBeats.com. As some of you may know, I'm a Kontakt power user. I use it for everything from strings to keyboards to drums. And it's really like a central part of my workflow. And also because I'm selling Kontakt instruments since last year, I decided to show my beginner subscribers, the basic stuff about Kontakt, like the folder architecture, the way to load instruments, the way to use it to actually make beats in your DAW. So follow me through these basic concepts as I show you how to use Kontakt to make beats. Let's go. So the first thing I want you to understand is the folder architecture of Kontakt's instruments and libraries. Here we have all of my complete libraries. And if we click on any one of those, you'll see pretty much the same structure where you have documentation, which is the manual, the instruments, which are the NKI files that you load up into Kontakt, the samples. In this case, these are compressed Native Instruments format, but sometimes you'll have literally the wave samples. These are the resource files in which you have the scripts and the information on which image to put on the GUI and stuff like that. And finally, this NICNT file, which is the file that allows you to load up a library inside of the library browser in Kontakt. Let's take a look at some other types of Kontakt instruments. Let's look at, for example, my latest sub library. It's an 808 instrument that I've programmed, and it's up for sale, by the way, on delicatebeats.com. And here, if you go to the samples folder, I do not use the Native Instruments compression format, so you can literally have these wave files and you can play them like this. So whenever you have a Kontakt instrument, you can also just go in the samples folder and drag and drop into your DAW, for example, the samples if you don't want to use Kontakt. So the two main things that you have to look out for when you have a new Kontakt library is the samples folder if you just want to use the samples, and where are the NKI files. Next up, I'd like to show you how to load Kontakt onto a software instrument track inside of Logic Pro X. So first of all, let's begin by creating a software instrument track. And once this track is set up, you're going to want to go to Instrument here and load up Native Instruments Kontakt. Now, by itself, Kontakt is an empty shell. Here you see my library browser, but you want to pay attention to this empty black spot here, which is the space where you can load up samples, instruments, libraries. So first of all, let's go back to my hard drive here into the completes folder. So there's this first file browser you can use for any type of WAV file or Kontakt instruments you want to load up. What we're going to do here is go to the instruments folder. And now you can either double click or drag and drop any of these .nki files. So let's try that. All right, so now the library has fully loaded and I'm ready to play it. Now I'd like to show you how to add these libraries to the library tab. So here at the top you have add library, and because all of my libraries are pretty much loaded up, I'm just going to go down here because lately I've changed hard drives and now Kontakt cannot locate certain libraries. So if we want to load up, for example, the Scarby Prebase library, we can just go here into locate, and we're going to try to find where this .nicnt, you remember this file that I've mentioned earlier, which has the information regarding this little image and instrument browser. So we're going to click on the browse folder button, and here, if I go back to my complete folder, and obviously you have to know where on your hard drive reside all of these libraries. And here I should have the Scarby pre-bass library. And if I click enter, so I'm going to click OK, enter my password, and here you go. Now you could click on instruments, and in this library there's only one instrument, and here you have it. Just to show you the other example, let's say the kinetic metal, I'm just going to remove it, and if it were a brand new library that I just had bought, I would click on add library, and here click on kinetic metal, press enter, and kinetic metal is now available, and I can just use all of these instruments, drag and drop them here, and boom, I'm ready to use this library. Okay, now let's try something different. Let's try to just load up a wave sample in Kontakt and create an instrument with it. There are two ways to create an instrument. You can either double click and it's going to create this empty slot where you can add the effects and put the samples on your MIDI keyboard and edit the wave if there were samples loaded up. But my preferred way of doing this is just, let's remove the instrument first. My preferred way of doing this is just to go, oops, sorry, I don't need a browser for now. Let's say we go back to this 808. I can just take a wave sample and drag it and drop it into the blank space here. And it's automatically going to create this little instrument interface. And if you click on the wrench to edit the wave sample, you can go into mapping first, and mapping is what Kontakt does to make the sample playable on all keys. Okay, now I'm not going to go into all of the options like the sampling options and all of the effects, but it just goes to show you that if you just drag and drop a wave file into Kontakt, you can already play it on your MIDI keyboard. Let's take a drum hit. Let's go into this Smoke 2 samples library, and in the samples I'm going to use one of these trap snares. So again, I'm just dragging and dropping the sample into Kontakt. So as you see, automatically Kontakt has mapped this snare to all of the keys, so it makes it very easy to go and do these typical trap snare rolls. But what I want to show you is, once again, if we click on the wrench, you can add effects on all of these little squares here. So we're going to go into insert effects, and the first thing I want to do is add an EQ. So there's a bunch of different types of EQs. I prefer the SSL G EQ here because you have more flexibility and control over the sound. And you have 4 bands of EQ here, and if, for example, I wanted to take some of the high end off, I could just go like this and maybe add a little bit of body to it. So here, instead of creating a bell around 700, I'm going to create a bell around, let's say, 200, and right, just like this. Next, I'd like to put a compressor on the sound, so I'm going to go into effects again and add this compression plugin. And I really like, I know that Kontakt is a bit cluttered, but always look on the left for the presets. Any of these effects will come with a bunch of different settings that can be very useful just to get going. So in this case, I'm going to go press on pre here, which stands for preset. I'm going to use, well, let's say the track slammer, just so we really hear what we're doing with the compressor. So once this is done, I kind of like the trail that it gives off, but I'm just gonna ease off on the threshold a bit. And if you want to see the before and after difference, there's always the little B here, which stands for bypass, and you can. So it really adds a lot of aggression. I really like the compressor in Kontakt. And finally, let's finish off this effects tour with a reverb. So in effects here, you have two different types of reverbs. There's a reverb, but there's always also the convolution reverb, which to me sounds a bit more, I don't know, realistic and natural. So in here, again, there's a bunch of presets. Let's try a real plate reverb, one of these E245s, and let's go for medium trail, 1.7 seconds. So obviously this is way too much, but again, here, look, there is a dry and a wet dial, so I'm just going to ease off on the wet. And again, by bypassing it. And here you have it. So there's really so many options in terms of effects just inside of Kontakt. Okay, so to wrap up the tutorial, I want to create a little beat just using Kontakt instruments to show you the power of this sampler. I've created 3 software instrument tracks here. On the first one, I loaded up my drum kit Smoke 2. On the second track, I loaded up Signal by Output, which is going to help us create a little arpeggiator sequence. And on the third track, I want to show you how to load up an instrument. So first of all, obviously you need to have a software or MIDI instrument track set up in your arrange window. And on the input of this track, we are going to go into our VST, or in this case, AU folders, and find Native Instruments Kontakt 5 and click on the stereo. For the sake of the presentation, I hid the browser, but you can always click on the browse, and then here, well, obviously again, you need to know where you are storing your Kontakt libraries and instruments. So once that is done, you either drag and drop or double click on the NKI file you want to load up on the track, and here you have it. Now I can play my 808. To start off this beat, I'm going to lay down a little arpeggiator sequence. I have a MIDI keyboard set up, so it's plugged into my computer by USB, and I can play the notes like this. If you don't have a MIDI keyboard, that's not a biggie. You can always write down MIDI information with the pen tool. For this first track, I'm going to use my keyboard, and later on for the drums, I'm going to show you how to do that with the pen tool. So let's record a little something. Right, just one chord for now. I'm going to quantize this, and if you're a Logic Pro X user, by holding down Shift and Alt, you can drag the notes back to the end of the first bar so that they all line up, and when I'm going to duplicate this chord, everything's going to loop up perfectly. So just a neat little trick to make the MIDI information perfect, quote unquote. Now we have this. Right, and we are going to fill the low end with a 808 sequence. So again, I'm going to press record and play a little something on my MIDI controller. Again, let's quantize the notes. Let's duplicate this pattern, and what I'm going to do now is go into my Kontakt instrument and play a little bit with the sound just to make it more interesting with the arpeggiator sequence that we have. So let's try to have the glide set up so that when I hit these high notes, it glides from the lower note to the upper octave note. And I'm going to try a different kit, different sound. I think I like this one. Let's boost up the low end a little bit. Okay, so that works for me. Let's just look at the limiter here, see if we don't peak too hard. And finally, I told you I was going to show you how to create a MIDI sequence using the pen tool instead of a MIDI controller. So here in Logic, I can change the tool to the pen tool. And when you click in the Arrange window, it automatically creates a placeholder for MIDI information. So I'm going to drag this all the way down to the end of the 4th bar. And if you just have the Arrange window open, let's see, I'm going to put the arrow tool on the first one and the pen tool on the second one, so that by clicking Command, I can quickly shift between the arrow tool or the drag and drop tool and the pen tool. Now, if you double click on this, and in most DAWs, when you double click on a MIDI track, it's going to open up the piano roll. In the piano roll, what I'm going to do is just draw one first note, just like this. And I have the kick like that. Let's use this kick, okay? And the first thing we want to do is line up the kicks with the 808. So by clicking on the 808 sequence with Shift down, I see the bass notes that I've hit. So it becomes very easy to just line up my kicks with the 808s, just like that. And by the way, the sample information is played according to the length of the notes. So if you pay attention here to these two kicks, let's say, for example, I cut this one short. See how the decay is played according to the length of the MIDI note. Always interesting to know that the playback is very tightly linked to the MIDI information you enter. Okay, so I've drawn a pretty effective kick drum sequence. Now I'm just going to go back into my drum pattern. Lay down a very simple snare sequence. Okay, and in this bank I also have some hi-hat loops all the way to the top here. So now I have kick drum, snare, and hi-hat. Let's unsolo all of these tracks and listen to what we have. Okay, so works okay, but now my hi-hat is much louder than what I would want. So what I can do is select my kick and snare hits, and here you see the velocity of these notes. So what I can do while they're all selected is move it all the way up to 128, which is the maximum value in MIDI. And now so still a bit loud, so what I'm going to do is double click on this MIDI note here, and again I have the value here, so I can just, to me that's better. Let's copy that. And I could also select these two, go back to the snare and maybe move it down a notch. So see how MIDI makes all of the wave playback so much more flexible, because if I were just to enter these wave files into my arrange window, I'd have to either duplicate the some tracks to have certain hits hit louder and some be quiet, more quiet. But when you have this control with the MIDI, it makes it very, very flexible to have those drum kits in Kontakt and basically just move around MIDI information. So this wraps up this beginner presentation on Kontakt 5. I hope I gave you enough pointers to get started using this wonderful sampler, and also I hope that I showed you the immense power and versatility of this tool. This is why it's such a central part of my workflow as a professional composer, because you really have at your fingertips such a wide array of sounds, and recorded always at a very, very high quality. So it helps you to achieve incredible results all in the box very, very fast. So grab a copy of Kontakt 5 and get going. If you have any questions or comments, use the comments below. I'll be more than happy to exchange with you or try to answer your questions. And subscribe to the channel, watch the other videos, as I always, show more tips and tricks on how to use Kontakt. So thank you for watching, and go out and make bangers.